take you through a practice called the daily cat stretch. I won't be breaking down the movements quite so much as we do in our regular class, so if you aren't very comfortable with the movements, taking some time to learn about the movements in some of the tutorials or in the weekly classes that that I offer. They're often, these movements are the ones I base the classes on, and we break them down into smaller bits. So we start off with a soma scan. So make your way down onto the floor. This practice can also be done on a bed. If you need some support underneath your head or your back, feel free to use any props that you need throughout the practice. Once you come down onto your back, if you're comfortable extending your legs out to the end of the mat, feel free to do so. If that tends to increase tension in your body, by all means leave the knees in a bent position. And then just take a few moments to allow yourself to settle in here. Maybe noticing the breath first. Notice the space that your body has to allow your breath to expand. And then begin to notice how your body comes into contact with the floor. So noticing the heels and the way they're resting into the floor. We have a sense of knowing where we are in space, so noticing if you have a tendency for the legs to be in different positions. Usually they tend to be in the same position, but if we have some tension patterns, then we might notice one foot turns out further than the other, or points down, or flexes up. So just noticing what the sensation is around the feet and the heels. Bringing awareness into the calves and how they contact the floor. Again, notice the points of contact. Check that out in the back of the thighs as well. Notice if maybe one leg feels heavier than the other into the floor. And then bringing your awareness to your weight of your pelvis into the floor. Sense and feel the contact points of the pelvis from the top to the bottom of it, and even from the left to the right. Sometimes we might have a little more weight into one side of the pelvis than the other. And then from there, bring awareness to the space of the low back. So notice the curve of your spine, the space that's between the floor and the spine. Then bringing awareness to the place where the thoracic spine, where the ribs connect to the spine. Where do you start to feel the ribs and the thoracic spine on the floor? Sense and feel the shoulder blades onto the floor. Do you feel your shoulder blades on the floor? Do they feel the same on the left as they do on the right? Notice their depth into the floor. And then bring awareness to your arms, and noticing again maybe the position that you've chosen for your arms. If you rest palm up or palm down. Notice the contact points on each arm, if there's differences between them. And then checking in with the space underneath your neck, the curve there. And then where on the back of the head do you make contact with either the floor or a cushion under your head? Is it in the center? Is the head turned slightly to the left or to the right? Is the chin jutting up towards the sky? Just noticing where you're starting from. And then from here, if your knees aren't bent, go ahead and bend your knees, bringing your feet to the floor. Just at a comfortable distance from the pelvis. And then we're going to pay attention to the movement of the spine with our arch and flatten and move into arch and curl. So as we arch, we take the tailbone towards the mat and the head towards the mat, creating tension or contraction in the back of the body. Slowly let that contraction release. Going in the opposite direction, the pubic bone and the lower ribs roll towards each other in the flatten. And then we slowly let that contraction on the front of the body release. And go through that arch and flatten. Maybe 2 more times, exploring it in your body. What are you feeling? Where are you efforting from? Consider letting go of one side of the body, the back side of the body completely as we flatten, and then letting go completely of the front side of the body as we go into our arch. Letting your breath find its natural rhythm as you move. And then from our arch and flatten, we'll move towards our arch and curl. So we take the hands behind the head, clasped behind the head. When we arch, we press the head into the hands, tailbone to the mat, elbows to the mat. So we're arching and lifting the spine away from the floor, then slowly releasing. Going in the opposite direction, bring your elbows to the sky, tuck your chin, and then curl up, rib cage and pubic bone roll towards each other, abdominals are contracting. Slowly releasing as we come back down. And letting it go completely on the front side of the body. And then going towards your arch again. Releasing the arch and going into your curl. And practicing one more. Once you've completely released the arch and curl, you're going to roll over onto our tummy. Once you come onto your tummy, you're going to bring your hands underneath your forehead and just let yourself settle into this new position for maybe a breath or two, letting your hands, your head rest on the hands. And then in our back lift, we take our right arm down to our side, letting it rest on the floor. If that's really uncomfortable, you can just bring it into a position out to the side of your mat with your hand just up near the top corner of your mat. Your head will turn towards the left, so finding your either your cheek or the side of your forehead on the back of your left hand. And then we're going to lift up that left elbow, feel how that pulls the shoulder blade towards the spine. And slowly let that release. And then we take the head and lift it away from the hand as if you're trying to look over your left shoulder. And then slowly let that release. Feel for your right leg and then start to lift the right leg away from the floor. And then slowly let it release back down to the mat. And then we'll put the 3 pieces together. So when you do the full back lift, you lift the hand, the head, and the elbow and the leg all at one time. And we'll start off as you lift. Feeling the diagonal contraction across the back and then slowly lowering down. Watch for other pieces that might be trying to help you with this move. And then we'll do it 2 more times. worry about taking a pause. You can make sure you let things go completely before going into the next movement. And once you've done 3, come back to the center, letting your forehead rest on your hands. And then switching it to the other side. So the left arm comes down to your side, your head turns to the right, and find the placement of your head on your hand. And then lift your right elbow away from the floor. So I'm just breaking this one down into the 3 pieces. Slowly lowering that elbow down. Once it's completely at rest, you lift your head away from your hand as if to look over that right shoulder. Slowly lowering it back down. Sense and feel your left leg. And then we lift the left leg away from the floor, and then slowly letting it release. Tying the 3 pieces together, we lift, and then we exhale as we lower down. That's how I tend to do it. I lift on the inhale, but you may choose to lift on an exhale. And release on an inhale. Let your breath find what works the best for you. And again, once you've completed 3, we bring the hands back under the forehead and just take a moment to pause. And then rolling over onto our right side. So I like to use a cushion under my head when I do the side curl. And I also like to use a blanket under my ribs. It helps me stack my shoulders on top of each other. So I have my blanket all the way underneath. About the top edge of my blanket is at the bottom edge of my armpit. And then when I lie on my side, my knees and hips are at about 90-degree angles, and I've got my hips stacked, my shoulders stacked, and my back is in pretty much in alignment with the back edge of my mat. From here, I'm going to take my left arm up and over my head, letting my left hand cradle my right ear, and then when I go into the lift, I'm not pulling on my head, I'm just letting the weight of the head be supported by the hand. So the idea is that we take this whole left side into a contraction, taking your left ankle to the sky, hip hikes, ribs pull down, and we lift the head away from the block. Slowly releasing that side curl. And then again, lifting 2 more times, going into that conscious contraction, slowly feeling it, sensing it, and then slowly letting it come down. It's important to keep your knees together as you lift the ankle. So we're rolling that thigh to lift the ankle, and ribs and pelvis move towards each other. And letting it slowly release. And once you've done about 3 or 4, then we'll turn it all over to the other side. So you can roll over onto your back. I'm just going to flip ends on my mat. And again, making sure that we set ourselves up in that alignment. So we're stacked hips and shoulders. Back is against the back edge of, not against it, but in line with the back edge of your mat. And then we take the right arm up and over the head, cradling the left ear in your hand. And the ankle lifts. As we hike the hip, pull the ribs down towards the pelvis, and then the shoulder lifts the head away from the block. Head is resting in your hand, and then slowly release. And then repeat 2 or 3 more lifts. finding your breath pattern. Make sure you're not holding your breath. And don't be afraid again to take that pause once you let everything go. And once we're complete with the side curl, we'll go back onto our back. And just once you come back onto your back, just take a moment. We'll keep the knees in a bent position for this practice, just noticing where things are resting now in terms of the position of the spine, the weight into the pelvis and into the shoulders. We're going to move towards a diagonal arch and curl. So we're going to take our right hand behind our head. We're going to visualize the diagonal line from our right shoulder to our left hip crease. And then we're going to curl those 2 points together in the diagonal curl. And you can lift your elbow towards your left knee. And then you can bring your left knee in towards the right elbow. So there's a rotation of the spine and a curl. Letting the leg and the head come back down. Going in the opposite direction, take your left hip towards the floor. Your left leg moves out to the left slightly. Your right elbow presses to the floor, and you might turn your head slightly to the right. And then we release that diagonal arch and move into your diagonal curl. Right elbow to left knee, slowly releasing and going into the arch. Elbow to knee again in the diagonal curl. And one more diagonal arch. And slowly releasing that arch and coming back to neutral. Take a moment between repetition or between sides. And then we take the left hand behind the head. And then we take that left elbow towards the sky, starting to imagine that line towards the right hip, curling up, bringing the right knee towards the left elbow. And then we release, coming down. Foot comes to the floor, elbow comes to the mat. Taking it into the arch, we press the elbow to the mat, the shoulder presses in. You might turn your head to the left. Right hip moves towards the floor as the right leg slightly rotates out in that diagonal arch. And then releasing it and going towards your diagonal curl. Left shoulder to right hip, left elbow to right knee. And then repeating it maybe 1 or 2 more times, just exploring that movement. And again, once you've completed, we come to rest. And then we need to have enough space around us to bring our arms out to our sides. So I'm just going to turn my angle on my mat a little bit here. You can either choose to have your knees together, or you may choose to bring the feet a little bit wider than hip distance apart. Your choice. And then we're going to go into our wash rag twist. So your arms are at your sides about shoulder height. And we'll take the knees over to the left first. So as you take your knees to the left, you're going to turn your head to the right. Your right palm is going to face the sky, and then you roll your left palm towards the floor. Bring yourself back up to center and reverse it. So we go knees right, head turns to the left, left palm up, right palm down. Move in a controlled range of motion, in a comfortable range, letting your breath find a natural rhythm I'll take it back and forth, maybe 1 or 2 more times. And then when you come back up to center, we're going to go into internal and external rotation of the leg. So it's helpful to be able to slide your leg on the floor. So I'm going to take my angle towards the camera here so you can see my leg, hopefully. I'm going to take my sock off. Ooh, might not slide well. And you can't see my foot. Okay. I'm not going to be able to lay completely back here. The idea is you'll be laying with your head on the floor. I'm just going to keep mine up for the purpose of the demo here. So my right leg is extended into a long position. My left knee is in a bent position. I'm going to start to turn my right leg out towards the right. So my toes turn to the right, and then I bring them back to center, and then turn my thigh so my toes turn to the left. And then go back and forth between your internal and external rotation 2 or 3 times. And then the next time you have your toes turned out to the left, we're going to drag your heel in towards your bum, and then bring your knee to center, and then slide your heel away from your bum. Rotate your thigh in towards the left, pull your heel in towards the bum, let your knee come back to center, and extend the leg. Rotate to the right, so thigh turns out to the right, foot turns out. Slide your heel in, come to center, slide the heel away. Rotate to the left, slide your heel in, come to center, slide the heel away from the bum. And repeat it 1 more time. And then when you're complete, you can bring that left knee to the, or left foot to the floor, and then we'll switch that over, right foot to the floor and switch it over to the left side. So the leg goes long here, we rotate to the left, slide, actually before we do the sliding, just rotate to the left and then rotate into center and take that back and forth. Again, 2 or 3 times. We're moving the thigh to move the foot. So that leg bone is rolling in your hip socket. And then we rotate the foot out towards the left, drag your heel towards your bum, bring your knee to center, slide the foot towards the end of the mat, rotate to the right, so the toes turn in, and then you drag your heel towards your bum, knee and foot come to center, and then you push your foot out. Rotate to the left, slide the heel in, bring the toes and the knee to center, and then we slide out. So even though I'm referencing the foot here, the hip is doing all the work, and the movement is being translated down through the leg. And then practice that. External is to the left, dragging the heel in, bringing the leg to center, slide the heel out. Internal rotation is taking the thigh towards rolling it towards the right, and then dragging the heel in, coming to center, and sliding the foot out. Okay, and then bring that foot back in. And from here, we roll over onto our side, and we come up to a seated position. So in the seated position, if you need support, you always have the option to bring a cushion underneath your pelvis. This practice can also be done seated in a chair. So the idea with our seated position, though, is that our legs are going to be going in the knees will be pointing in the same direction. So if I shouldn't say that. We have our thighs both internally rotated. So I call this a mermaid sit. I rotate my right thigh in, my left thighs, they're rotating in opposite direction. One is rotating in, one is rotating out. So the idea though is that we want to be able to still sit on our pelvis so that our pelvis is level. So that's why I put a cushion underneath, because my hips are a little bit tight. And then if that's really not doable, you can do a cross-legged position or sitting in a chair. So we're starting with, I've got my left knee bent into the external rotation position. My right knee is rotated internally, and I've got my right foot tucked behind me. So both knees are kind of more or less going towards that left side. Bringing my right hand to my left shoulder, I'm going to take my left hand and just place it behind my back on the floor. And then we start into our rotation. We take the turn, we turn towards the left. If it's available, you let your right hip lift away from the cushion and you turn your head to look behind you. Come back to center, and then we repeat that movement 2 or 3 times. Taking that twist all the way through the spine. So remember to move in your comfortable range of motion. And then once you're released with that, we're going to add on to that a little bit. So we're going to do some differentiation of the spine and the head here. We turn into our twist towards the left. Hold that twist towards the left as you turn your head to look towards the right, and then look towards the left. Look towards the right, and look towards the left. One more time, look towards the right, look towards the left, and then rotate and come back to center. We're going to add one more movement onto that. So we're going to rotate to the left, turn your head to look to the right, and then we bring the head to look to the left as we bring the torso back to center. So it goes torso to the right, head to the left, torso to the left, head to the right, torso to the right, head to the left, torso to the right, and head to the left. And then bring your head back to center. So there are more pieces to that, but for the basics of this practice, we're just going to stick with those ones. So then we're going to switch the legs around so that the right knee is pointing towards the right. And then again, we want to try to find that sense of levelness of our pelvis. So I have to make a little adjustment here because my left hip is a little tighter than my right. So I just bring myself up a little bit higher so I don't feel that pinch in my left hip here. Left hand comes to the right shoulder, right hand comes towards the floor behind you. Taking your twist towards the right, you can let that left hip lift away from the floor or the mat, and then you come back to center, and then take that twist to the right, looking around behind that right shoulder, and then we come back to center. And again, the magic number is usually about 3 or 4 here in somatics. And then we take the next twist to the right, and we're going to differentiate the spine here from the neck, then the head. So we hold the twist to the right, we turn the head to look to the left, turn to the right, turn to the left, just the head, and one more time to the right, and then to the left, and come back to center. And then taking it to the next level of differentiation so that the head movement is opposite of the torso. So we rotate to the right, head turns to the left, we bring the torso back to center as we turn the head to the right. Torso to the right, head to the left, torso to the left as the head goes right, torso to the right as the head turns left, and then torso to the left as the head turns right, and then bringing your head back to center. And that completes the seated rotation. So then from here, we come back down onto our back to complete a soma scan, and I encourage you to allow yourself some time on your mat after your soma scan to go into a little bit of relaxation. Just rest and integrate those movements into the nervous system. So once you come down onto your back, again, maybe lengthening the legs out onto the mat if that feels available to you. And then we take our soma scan again. So bringing awareness once again to the way that the heels are resting into the mat. Noticing their weight into the floor, their general rotation, so what position are the toes pointing out. Bring awareness to the back of the calves, the back of the thighs. Is there any differences, any changes to the depth of the legs or their contact points? Noticing the position of the pelvis, again sensing and feeling where do you contact the floor. Is there levelness between left and right? Bring awareness to the curve in the lower back, noticing if there's been any changes to the size of that curve, or even the sensation around the lumbar spine. Notice now where your rib cage and thoracic spine start to contact the floor. Notice the way that your shoulder blades come into connection. If there's a change from when you started your practice. Contact points in the arms. And then maybe even the position of your head. Just paying attention and noticing. And then come back to your breath. Notice if there's a little more space for your breath to expand into the space of the torso. And then from this soma scan, if you prefer to allow your legs to bend, go ahead and bend the knees or bring them onto a chair or use a bolster. Taking the time to get yourself comfortable as you then shift into Shavasana or relaxation, where we just allow the body to be here, to be in stillness, and to notice. Notice what the mind does as you rest in Shavasana. And if you find that your mind is continually going off in thought, just recognize that your mind is thinking and just bring it back to pay attention to the sensation of the breath or the sensation of the body in connection with the floor. And I encourage you to rest here for maybe 5 minutes before you carry on with